Black Americans have played a crucial role in helping to advance America politically, socially, and economically into what America is today. Since 1976, every US president has designated the month of February as Black History Month to honor the achievements of the Black community. In today's video, we will be talking about the Black men who changed America today. Therefore, don't go anywhere and watch the video till the end. Also, if this is your first time visiting our channel, click the subscribe button and keep yourself updated with new videos. Black history is as important to be celebrated year-round as February is a month to shine a special spotlight on Black leaders whose recent accomplishments and impact will inspire many generations to come. They are the civil rights leaders and abolitionists whose faces we see plastered on calendars and postage stamps. They resurface each February when the nation commemorates African Americans who have transformed America. These leaders, who have made history in their respective fields, stand on the shoulders of pioneers who came before them. To start with, the most important one is Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King is perhaps the most famous African American in history. Before going into his famous movements, why not take a look at a brief introduction to him? Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, the second child of Martin Luther King Sr., a pastor, and Alberta Williams King, a former school teacher. He was a social activist and Baptist minister who played a key role in the American civil rights movement from the mid-1950s until his assassination in 1968. Through peaceful protest, King sought equality and human rights for African Americans, the economically disadvantaged, and all victims of injustice. He was the driving force behind watershed events such as the Montgomery bus boycott and the 1963 March on Washington, which helped bring about such landmark legislation as the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. King was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964 and is remembered each year on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, a US federal holiday since 1986. Let's take a detailed version of his movements for human rights. The King family had been living in Montgomery for less than a year when the highly segregated city became the epicenter of the burgeoning struggle for civil rights in America. Galvanized by the landmark Brown v. Board of Education decision of 1954. On December 1, 1955, Rosa Parks, secretary of the local chapter of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, refused to give up her seat to a white passenger on a Montgomery bus and was arrested. Activists coordinated a bus boycott that would continue for 381 days. The Montgomery bus boycott placed a severe economic strain on the public transit system and downtown business owners. They chose Martin Luther King Jr. as the protest's leader and official spokesman. By the time the Supreme Court ruled segregated seating on public buses unconstitutional in November 1956, King, heavily influenced by Mahatma Gandhi and the activist Bayard Rustin, had entered the national spotlight as an inspirational proponent of organized, non-violent resistance. King had also become a target for white supremacists who firebombed his family home that January. On September 20, 1958, Izola Vera Curry walked into a Harlem department store where King was signing books and asked, "Are you Martin Luther King?" When he replied yes, she stabbed him in the chest with a knife. King survived, and the attempted assassination only reinforced his dedication to non-violence. King once said that the experience of these last few days has deepened his faith in the relevance of the spirit of non-violence if necessary social change is to take place. After the success of Montgomery bus boycott in 1957, he and other civil rights activists, most of them fellow ministers, founded the Southern Christian Leadership Conference (SCLC), a group committed to achieving full equality for African Americans through nonviolent protest. The SCLC motto was, "Not one hair of one head of one person should be harmed." King would remain at the helm of this influential organization until his death. In his role as SCLC president, Martin Luther King Jr. traveled across the country and around the world, giving lectures on nonviolent protest and civil rights, as well as meeting with religious figures, activists, and political leaders. Despite his arrest for his involvement on April 12th, King penned the Civil Rights Manifesto known as the Letter from Birmingham Jail, an eloquent defense of civil disobedience addressed to a group of white clergymen who had criticized his tactics. Later on, Martin Luther King Jr. worked with several civil rights and religious groups to organize the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, a peaceful political rally designed to shed light on the injustices Black Americans continued to face from across the country. Held on August 28th and attended by some 200,000 to 300,000 participants, the event is widely regarded as a watershed moment in the history of the American civil rights movement and a factor in the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. These events deepened the differences between Martin Luther King and his opponents. For these reasons, Martin Luther King was assassinated. He was fatally shot while standing on the balcony of a motel in Memphis, where King had traveled to support a sanitation workers' strike. In the wake of his death, a wave of riots swept major cities across the country, while President Johnson declared a national day of mourning. Martin Luther King had many great characteristics, and they all guided him along the way to bettering our world. Apart from all these, the service he did for the people in this country is still remembered, and his peacemaking ways have inspired us all. Similarly, Barack Obama, the first African American to hold the office of president, is another Black man whose accomplishments changed America. So why not there should be a brief introduction to such an important man, Barack Obama. In full, Barack Hussein Obama was born on August 4th, 1961 in Hawaii, US. Before winning the presidency, Obama represented Illinois in the US Senate. After his early education, he received his degree in law, then he moved to Chicago and became active in the Democratic Party. He organized Project Vote, a drive that registered tens of thousands of African Americans on voting rolls and that is credited with helping Democrat Bill Clinton win Illinois and capture the presidency in 1992. Now let's talk about his work for Americans. He became a pivotal figure in American history even before his inauguration. But after winning a second term in 2012, his achievements in office have made him one of the most transformative presidents of the past 100 years. Although he took office with the country in peril and led it through the Great Recession, 2 wars, civil unrest, a rash of mass shootings, and changing cultural demographics. In the 2008 campaign, he called for change, and 8 years later, we are living in a more prosperous country because of it. Despite these problems, he rescued the country from the Great Recession, cutting the unemployment rate from 10% to 4.7% over 6 years, signed the Affordable Care Act, which provided health insurance to over 20 million uninsured Americans, and ended the war in Iraq. He also ordered the capture and killing of Osama bin Laden and passed the $787 billion America Recovery and Reinvestment Act to spur economic growth during the Great Recession. One of his great achievements is that he began the drawdown of troops in Afghanistan and repealed the military's "Don't Ask, Don't Tell" policy. Furthermore, he signed the Hate Crimes Prevention Act, making it a federal crime to assault someone based on sexual or gender identification. He also helped to negotiate the landmark Iran nuclear deal and, above all, he won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2009 for his extraordinary efforts to strengthen international diplomacy and cooperation between people. President Obama lifted a 22-year-old human ban that restricted those with HIV or AIDS from entering the United States. He then introduced the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, for his constituents, and it became law. This was the most significant regulatory makeover of the US healthcare system since the 1960s. Under the new regulations, Obama sought to increase quality, affordability, and access to healthcare. Finally, Obama left the presidency at age 55, after his constitutionally limited 2 terms ended on January 20th, 2017. Despite not holding any office, he is still playing an active role in public affairs. He also has devoted his energy to raising money and planning for the opening of the Obama Presidential Center in Chicago, Illinois. So, to conclude, well, that's all for today's video. Feel free to share your experience in the comments section and keep us informed about your interests. It will be very interesting to read. And if you like the video, why not give it the thumbs up? I'll see you in the next video. If you are new to the channel, please subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so that you won't miss any further videos. Until then, goodbye.